Welcome back, everyone. I've been wanting to do this deep dive for a while now, and I'm so glad we're finally here. C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters.
Yeah, it's a classic.
It really is, but reading it as a devout Catholic, it hits different, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
It's like you're getting a glimpse into spiritual warfare, but from the enemy's side.
Yeah, exactly. You're getting inside the mind of the demons. It's that reverse psychology that Lewis does so brilliantly.
And we've got a real deep dive ready for you all on this one,
Oh yeah, we're going deep.
with all those theological insights I know you're all looking for.
Because what Lewis does, it's like we learn about Christian faith, but by seeing it through the eyes of these demons.
Right.
The whole book is letters. It's the senior demon, Screwtape.
Screwtape, yeah.
He's mentoring his nephew, Wormwood, on how to tempt a human soul.
Okay, so we're basically eavesdropping on the bad guy's strategy session here.
Exactly.
Which is a little unnerving, to be honest.
It can be, yeah.
But also fascinating.
Yeah.
But I do have a question.
Okay, sure.
Wouldn't it be dangerous for a faithful Catholic to delve into, like, these demonic strategies? I mean, understanding them, like, backfire somehow.
You know, it's a good question. And I think the answer is that knowledge, especially self-knowledge, can be really powerful.
Right.
You know, it can be a very powerful tool against temptation.
Okay.
And remember, Screwtape's advice, even though it's intended for evil, it can actually help us understand the path to resisting it.
I see what you're saying.
It's like if you know what your opponent is going to do, you can counter it.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So let's jump into some of those moves.
Let's do it.
One thing that struck me was Screwtape's advice to avoid using logic to pull the patient away from faith. Like, he actually tells Wormwood to use trendy jargon instead of arguing for materialism.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like, don't try to make materialism true. Just make it sound cool.
Yeah.
Make it sound strong. Or the philosophy of the future. Don't worry about the truth part.
And I was like, oh, wow. He gets it. He understands, like, the power of branding.
Yeah, even for evil.
As a Catholic, I can totally see that in today's world.
Right.
It's not always, logical arguments that challenge faith.
Yeah.
It's more the way certain ideas are packaged.
Right. Yeah.
Like they try to make things sound like progressive or scientific to make them seem more compelling.
Right.
Even if there's not a lot of, like, evidence.
You hit on something really important. It's this tendency we have to just kind of go with what sounds good.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of really, like, thinking critically about what is true.
Yeah, like the packaging matters more than the product.
It's like, oh, this sounds smart. This sounds sophisticated. I'm going to go with that.
Yeah.
But what's it actually saying? What's underneath?
Okay, so it's not enough to just, like, have the right answers.
No.
We also need to be aware of how those answers are being presented.
For sure.
And potentially, like, distorted.
Absolutely. And you know what? Screwtape has he's got another little trick up his sleeve.
Oh, no, what is it?
He tells Wormwood to keep the patient just totally, like, engrossed in the stream of immediate sense experiences.
What does that even mean?
He even calls it, get this, he calls it real life.
Really? Real life?
Yeah.
So it's like he's trying to, like, drown the patient in the everyday, in the mundane.
Yes.
So he never has time to, like, think about the bigger picture.
Exactly. He's trying to distract him from any deeper spiritual truths.
The things that, as Catholics we understand are actually the real things.
Feel really real. Yeah.
Yeah.
This world is temporary, It's a stepping stone to eternity.
Right, it is. This world it's just a temporary reality. But I'll admit, sometimes those everyday distractions feel so all-consuming. Like, who has time for contemplation when you're juggling work, family, and trying to, stay on top of everything?
It's true. It's that balance, isn't it? It's a struggle for everyone. Yeah.
How do you live in this world, but also, stay focused on the spiritual?
Right.
Remember that example that Screwtape gives?
Oh, yeah. Well,
just distracting his patient with, like, lunch?
Lunch? Really?
Yeah, when the guy was about to have, like, this big spiritual breakthrough. Lunch.
Such a small thing.
I know, but it works.
It's like, wow, what are my lunch moments?
Exactly.
What are the seemingly harmless things that pull me away from, like prayer or reflection?
Yeah, what are those little distractions that get you off track? It's different for everybody, but recognizing them, that's a huge first step. And then
Right.
And then it gets even trickier.
Oh, no.
Because Screwtape starts talking about how to exploit, like, disappointment with the church.
Oh, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
We've all had those moments. You go to mass and, someone's got squeaky shoes or the choir's off key, and you're just like, really? This is the body of Christ.
He loves that. He feeds on that. Yeah. And we know the church is made up of imperfect people.
Of course.
Not angels.
Right.
But sometimes it's hard to reconcile that with our, ideals.
And he wants to prey on that. He wants to focus on those individual flaws and make you forget, like, the true essence of what the church is.
So he's using those imperfections as, like, a smokescreen.
Yes, a smokescreen. Exactly.
Making us focus on the squeaky shoes instead of, like, the shared faith that unites us.
Exactly. He's a master of misdirection. And speaking of misdirection, he then advises Wormwood to manipulate the patient's prayer life.
Oh, no. Not prayer.
Oh, yeah.
That's like our lifeline, our connection to God.
He knows that.
What does he say about that?
He wants to shift the focus inward onto the person's own feelings,
Oh, yeah.
like their perceived successes or failures, instead of keeping it focused on God.
Oh, man. I've totally fallen for that one before.
We all have.
Instead of, like, praying for courage, I get caught up in trying to, like, psych myself up into feeling brave, which isn't the same thing at all.
Right. It's not.
It's like I'm trying to manufacture a spiritual experience.
Yes. Instead of just being present.
Yeah.
Being present with God.
Yeah.
That's what he wants. He wants to turn prayer into this, like, performance.
Right.
A self-centered exercise instead of an act of surrender.
Wow. Okay, so how do we avoid that trap? How do we keep our prayer life focused outward on God?
That's a great question. And that's where the beauty of traditional prayer forms come in. The sacraments. Focusing on God's will, the needs of others. These are the things that help us maintain that proper orientation, that outward focus.
Okay, yeah.
It's not about us. It's not about our feelings.
Right.
It's about aligning ourselves with God's will.
This is already giving me a lot to think about. It's like Screwtape is giving us a crash course in spiritual warfare.
He is, in a way. And believe it or not, he's just getting started.
Oh, no.
There are many more layers to his strategy.
Okay, I'm a little nervous, but also intrigued. Tell me more.
All right, so next he reveals something he calls the law of undulation.
The law of undulation.
Yeah, he's talking about how human spiritual experience is just naturally cyclical.
Right.
We have peaks of fervor and troughs of dryness.
Oh, I know those troughs all too well. It's like you're on fire for God one minute, and then the next you feel like dry and disconnected.
Yeah.
You start questioning everything, wondering if you've lost your faith.
Yeah.
It's scary.
And of course, Screwtape sees those troughs as prime opportunities for temptation. But before we dive into that, let's unpack what these troughs really mean, in the context of our Catholic faith. You mentioned, feeling dry and disconnected.
Yeah.
That's what, a lot of Catholics experience as spiritual dryness. It's you're not lacking faith.
Right.
It's a feeling of distance from God.
Yeah, it's like, your prayers are just bouncing off the ceiling.
Exactly. And Screwtape, of course, wants you to think it's permanent.
Like, you're done.
Yeah, like game over.
It's like he's trying to, like, weaponize our own doubts against us, make us feel like failures.
Yeah, he's good at that. But if spiritual dryness is, like, normal part of the Catholic journey, how do we avoid, like, falling into despair when it hits?
Yeah, that's the question. I mean, it's so easy to just, like, give up.
It is. And that's what he wants.
Yeah.
But you're right. It is normal. I mean, even the saints.
The saints
went through this.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
The key is it's a journey, spiritual growth. It's not a constant upward climb.
Right. Okay.
It's not like, whoosh, straight to heaven. There are ups and downs.
And those fluctuations, they're just like part of the process.
They are part of the process. It's a refining fire, I think, is how the church puts it.
A refining fire. That's a good way to put it.
Helps you grow in humility.
Right.
And dependence on God. So how should we approach those times of dryness?
It's hard because you feel like your prayer life is just pointless.
We do. You feel like you're just talking to yourself.
Yeah. When you don't feel anything.
Right. It's all about feelings. And that's where trust comes in.
Okay.
Even when you don't feel God's presence, you can trust that he's still there.
Yeah.
It's like, think about it like when you love someone.
Okay.
Your feelings might go up and down.
Right.
But the underlying love, it's constant.
Right. Yeah.
It's always there. And it's also important to remember the objective value of prayer.
Okay.
And the sacraments.
Right.
Their efficacy doesn't depend on your feelings.
Right.
It depends on God's grace.
That's reassuring. So it's not about trying to, force ourselves to feel something during prayer.
No.
But about just, showing up, being present,
Yeah.
and trusting that God is working even when we don't feel it.
That's it. You got it. And that brings us back to Screwtape.
Oh.
Because he sees those periods of dryness as, prime opportunities.
For what?
For all sorts of temptations. All those, especially the sensual temptations.
Oh, like the ones related to sex.
That's the big one, yeah.
That's interesting because you'd think we'd be more vulnerable to those temptations when we're, spiritually strong. You know?
You think.
Yeah.
When you're feeling energized.
Yeah, like on a spiritual high.
Exactly. And that's what's so clever about Screwtape. He gets that. He understands that when our resistance is high, we're more likely to channel our energy into good things.
Okay, yeah.
But when we're feeling drained, we're more likely to seek comfort,
Right.
in those baser desires.
Right. Like they'll fill the void.
Yeah, just something to make you feel better in the moment.
So he's basically saying that when we're spiritually depleted, we're more susceptible to, the allure of, quick fixes and instant gratification.
That's it. He knows exactly how we're wired.
Wow.
He even goes so far as to say that the sexuality experienced during a trough period, he says it's subtly different in quality than that experienced during a peak.
Okay.
And he claims that it's much less likely to lead to the milk and water phenomenon, which the humans call being in love.
That's disturbing.
Yeah.
So he's saying that those kinds of temptations, they're more likely to lead us down, a darker path.
That's his intention.
Away from, God's plan for love and sexuality.
Yeah, he wants to draw you away from the pure, life-giving kind of sexuality that God intends.
Right.
The kind of love that's expressed within the sacrament of marriage.
Right.
He wants to twist it. He wants to corrupt it.
Yeah.
Take something beautiful and make it ugly. That makes me think about, the church's teachings on chastity and,
Right.
Reserving sexual intimacy from marriage.
Right.
And it's not about repression. It's about protecting.
Right.
Protecting the sacredness of sex.
Right.
And channeling it toward its proper end.
That's a crucial point,
Yeah.
I mean, Screwtape, he hates those guardrails.
He hates them.
Those boundaries that the church provides.
Oh, yeah, they drive him nuts.
And he wants us to see them as, restrictive.
Mm-hmm.
But they're actually there to protect us.
Right.
To guide us toward, true freedom and fulfillment.
That's it. He doesn't want you to be free.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But going back to, Screwtape's overall strategy.
Yeah.
He's clearly, a master manipulator.
Oh, he's good. He's very good.
It's he's always one step ahead.
Yeah.
Anticipating our weaknesses.
Yeah.
And then, exploiting them.
He's a master strategist, but remember, he's not all-powerful.
Right. Okay.
We have God's grace on our side.
Right.
And he's always stronger.
Okay. That's good to remember. So how do we stay ahead of Screwtape's game? What are some practical steps we can take to resist his temptations, especially during those times of spiritual dryness?
Well, one thing is to cultivate a strong prayer life.
Okay.
Even when you don't feel like it.
Right.
Remember we were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
It's not about feelings.
Right.
It's about fidelity.
Okay.
Just show up. Even a few minutes a day can make a huge difference.
That's good advice. Because sometimes I get overwhelmed,
Yeah.
thinking about praying the rosary.
Yeah.
Or doing an hour of adoration.
Right.
But even just 5 minutes of quiet time with God can be so grounding.
It can. And don't underestimate the power of the sacraments.
Right.
Especially confession and the Eucharist. They're tangible channels of God's grace.
Okay.
Even when we don't feel worthy.
Right.
Or deserving.
Speaking of confession.
Yeah.
It's funny how Screwtape tries to make that sacrament seem like such a burden.
Oh, yeah.
Like a source of shame.
He hates confession.
But I've always found it so liberating,
It is.
It's like getting a spiritual reset, a fresh start.
He hates it because it breaks his hold on you.
Oh. Ugh.
He wants you to wallow in guilt and shame. But confession offers forgiveness, healing.
Yeah.
It's like a spiritual detox.
Okay, so prayer, the sacraments,
Mm-hmm.
and remembering that spiritual dryness is, just a normal part of the journey. Those are all key to staying strong in our faith.
Those are the essentials.
Yeah.
Those are the things that will keep you grounded.
Okay.
And it also helps to have, a strong support system, people who can encourage you, keep you accountable.
Right. That makes me think about like the friends that Screwtape recommends for the patient.
Oh, yeah.
He tells Wormwood to introduce him to like a sophisticated, worldly couple.
Oh, yes. The bright young things.
Yeah, who are, rich, smart, superficially intellectual, and brightly skeptical about everything in the world.
He loves those types.
Yeah, those are his favorites.
Mm-hmm.
So he wants to surround the patient with people who will, like, subtly undermine his faith.
Yeah.
People who make him feel ashamed of his beliefs.
Exactly. Make him feel like he's, out of touch,
Right.
old-fashioned,
Yeah.
naive.
Mm-hmm.
He knows that the company you keep can really influence your spiritual life.
Yeah. As a Catholic, I've always been taught to be careful about the company I keep.
Yeah, it's good advice.
And it's not about, like, being judgmental.
No.
It's about recognizing that our friendships can either draw us closer to God or they can pull us away.
That's right. And Screwtape, he wants to exploit that.
Yeah.
He wants to exploit that natural desire we have to belong.
Right.
To be accepted.
Yeah. He wants the patient to feel like he has to choose between his faith and his social life.
Right. Which is a false dichotomy, of course. But
Yeah.
that's what he wants you to believe.
Right. Like, it's either...
Yeah, either you're cool and you hang out with these people,
Right.
or you're a religious fanatic and you're all alone.
He wants to create this idea that our faith is like something we can just switch on and off,
Yeah.
as needed, like depending on who we're with.
Exactly. Like it's a jacket you put on or take off.
Yeah.
Depending on the weather. But, as a devout Catholic,
Yeah.
your faith, it should permeate everything.
Right. It's not like compartmentalized.
No.
It's part of who we are.
It's the core of your being.
So how do we navigate that tension? How do we stay true to our faith while also like being open to friendships with people who don't share our beliefs?
It's a delicate balance,
Yeah.
but it's possible.
Okay.
I think the key is, to be rooted in your faith.
Okay.
Know what you believe
Right.
and why.
Right.
You can be friends with people who are different,
Yeah.
but you shouldn't compromise your values.
Right. Right.
Don't pretend to be someone you're not.
That's good advice. Be authentically ourselves.
That's it.
Even if it means like standing out from the crowd sometimes.
Sometimes you got to be the odd man out.
Yeah. But it's also important to remember that we're called to be witnesses.
Right.
To our faith. Not by like preaching at people.
Oh, no.
But by like living our lives in a way that reflects Christ's love.
That's it.
So it's not about like isolating ourselves from the world.
No.
But about like engaging with it.
Yeah, be in the world, but not of the world.
Yeah, okay, exactly. And that brings us to another interesting point that Screwtape makes. He points out that in modern times, there's been a decline in warnings against worldly vanities, the choice of friends, and the value of time.
Yeah.
He even boasts about how his side has successfully labeled those warnings as Puritanism.
Oh, yeah. He's good at that.
Which now carries like all these negative connotations.
Oh, yeah. Nobody wants to be a Puritan.
Right.
That's the worst thing you can be.
That's so devious,
Yeah.
It's like he's hijacked the language, turned something good and necessary into something negative.
He's a master spin, that's for sure.
Yeah, but the truth is, those old-fashioned warnings, they're still relevant today, right?
They are. They really are.
I mean, we need to be discerning about the company we keep,
Yeah.
the things that we prioritize, how we spend our time.
All those things, they matter.
Okay, so it's not about, like, being prudish or rejecting everything that the world has to offer.
No.
It's about, like, making wise choices.
Yeah.
Choices that align with our values and our ultimate goal, which is union with God.
That's it. All right, so speaking of wise choices, let's talk about the next stage of Screwtape's strategy, which involves exploiting the patient's newfound love for a devout woman.
Oh, no, not love. Love's a good thing, right?
It is.
Especially for Catholics.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's at the heart of our faith. But, Screwtape.
He always has an angle.
He knows how to twist things.
So he wants to use this relationship to, distract the patient from God.
That's his plan. Make him complacent.
Yeah. And ultimately to corrupt his spiritual life.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more. How does he plan to, use love as a weapon?
Well, he knows love reflects God's love.
Yeah.
And that's what terrifies him.
Okay.
But he's a master at twisting things, remember?
Right.
So he focuses on the fact that the patient is spending like all this time with the girl's family
Okay.
and her friends,
Right.
all devout Christians.
Okay, but isn't that like a good thing?
It can be.
Be surrounded by like good influences.
It can be, yeah.
It seems like the ideal situation, actually, for a new believer.
Right. But Screwtape is insidious.
Okay.
He tells Wormwood to exploit the fact that the patient's like a novice
Okay.
in this whole new circle.
Right.
You know, he's never experienced this depth of faith before.
Yeah.
Or this genuine love.
Okay.
It's intoxicating.
Right. Yeah, I could see how that could be overwhelming.
It is.
You know, like when you discover something amazing, you can kind of get carried away. Exactly. And that's what Screwtape wants.
Oh, no.
He wants to make the patient's enthusiasm excessive.
Okay.
And ultimately destructive.
Got it.
You know, he points out that the patient is likely to, like, exaggerate the virtues of his new friends.
Okay.
Particularly their humility.
Right.
He wants to catch him at the moment when he is really poor in spirit and smuggle into his mind the gratifying reflection, by Jove, I'm being humble.
Wow. Okay, that's sneaky.
Isn't it?
He's trying to turn humility into a source of pride.
Yes.
It's like, look how humble I am compared to everyone else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He knows pride is the root of all sin.
Right.
So if he can make the patient proud of his humility, he's halfway there.
It's like those people who are always like bragging about how much they don't brag.
Yes,
You know?
exactly.
It's a subtle form of self-righteousness disguised as humility.
It is. And a very effective tactic.
Bro.
Screwtape then advises Wormwood to, like, manipulate the patient's understanding of humility to make him focus on his supposed shortcomings
Right.
rather than on God's greatness.
Okay.
It's a form of spiritual narcissism.
So instead of seeing our flaws, like in light of God's perfection,
Yeah.
we become like obsessed with him.
Obsessed.
That's a dangerous trap.
It is.
I know I've fallen into it before, you know?
Oh, we all have.
Getting so caught up in self-criticism
Yeah.
that I forget about God's mercy.
That's exactly what he wants. He wants you to be so preoccupied with your perceived unworthiness that you lose sight of God's love and his grace.
So the antidote is remembering that true humility is about, like, acknowledging our dependence on God.
Yes.
Not about, like, putting ourselves down.
That's it. It's about surrendering to his love, to his mercy, allowing him to transform you from the inside out.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense.
But, you know, Screwtape has another trick up his sleeve.
Of course he does.
He wants the patient to feel like he's arrived spiritually.
Oh.
Just because he's found this community of believers.
Oh, got it.
Like, now I've reached some elite level of holiness.
Right. That makes me think about those, like, holier-than-thou types.
Oh, yeah.
Who, you know, look down on others.
Yeah.
Who aren't as advanced in their faith.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
He loves to create those divisions.
That's not what true Christianity is about.
No, it's not.
Right.
He wants to turn faith into a status symbol.
Yeah.
A way to elevate yourself above others.
Yeah.
But true Christianity, it's about humility, it's about service, it's about love.
It's about recognizing that we're all on a journey.
Yes.
And we're all in need of God's grace.
We are.
Regardless of where we are on that journey.
Beautifully said.
Right.
Okay, so now the war intensifies. And the patient's city is bombed.
Oh.
And Screwtape sees this as a prime opportunity to exploit, you know, fear.
Right.
Anxiety. Okay, but wait. Didn't Screwtape say earlier that he wanted to keep the patient alive?
He did?
What's with this sudden shift?
Well, remember, he's adaptable.
Okay.
And the patient is now much more resistant to temptation.
Right.
Largely due to the love and support of his girlfriend and her family.
Okay.
So Screwtape's getting desperate.
So he's willing to risk the patient's life in a last-ditch effort.
He is.
To claim his soul.
He is. He tries to tempt the patient with cowardice.
Okay.
Hoping he'll, you know, abandon his duty.
Right.
And flee the danger.
Okay.
But remember, as we discussed earlier, Screwtape can only exploit existing weaknesses.
Right.
He can't create virtues or vices.
So he's preying on the patient's natural fear?
Yeah.
Trying to, like, amplify it?
Amplify it.
At the point where it overwhelms his faith?
That's it.
Wow.
But here's the amazing part.
What?
Even in the midst of this, like, terror and chaos,
the
patient's faith shines through.
So he resists the temptation to cowardice. He does.
Wow.
And Screwtape is furious.
I bet.
He doesn't understand the power of grace.
Right.
The strength that comes from trusting in God.
Yeah.
Even when everything around us is falling apart.
Okay, now I'm on the edge of my seat.
All right.
What happens next?
Well, this is where the story takes an unexpected turn.
Okay.
The patient,
yeah,
he dies.
He dies.
He died.
Wait, I thought you said Screwtape was trying to keep him alive.
I know.
Right.
What happened?
It's a profound moment.
Yeah.
You know, remember, this isn't just a battle for one soul.
Right.
This is a story about the ultimate triumph of love and grace.
Okay.
The patient's death is not a defeat.
Okay.
It's a victory.
A victory. But how can that be?
Because death, for a Christian, is not the end.
Right.
It's a passage into eternal life.
Right.
Screwtape, with his, limited demonic perspective, he sees death as the ultimate evil.
Right.
But for the patient,
Yeah.
who dies in a state of grace, it's a homecoming. That's a beautiful way to look at it.
It is.
But I have to admit, I'm still, a little sad for the patient,
I get it.
He found love, he was growing in his faith, and then it was all, cut short.
It's natural to grieve.
Yeah.
But remember, the patient is now experiencing the fullness of joy and peace in God's presence.
Yeah.
He's finally home.
Right.
And that's something to celebrate.
That does bring comfort, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So what about Screwtape? How does he react to this unexpected turn of events?
Oh, he's devastated. Of course,
Yeah.
he rants and raves about the unfairness of it all.
Right.
But deep down, he knows he's been defeated.
Yeah.
He's lost the battle for the patient's soul.
So what's the takeaway for us as devout Catholics? What can we learn from this, spiritual thriller?
I think the key takeaway is that even in the midst of suffering, temptation, even death,
Yeah.
God's grace is always available to us.
Okay.
Screwtape, in his efforts to tempt the patient, he inadvertently reveals the power of love, prayer, the sacraments.
Right. Those are the weapons that help us fight the good fight, right?
They're weapons.
And ultimately, win the battle for our souls.
That's it. And the importance of community,
Right.
surrounding yourself with people
Yeah.
who support your faith and
Well,
challenge you to grow.
This has been an amazing deep dive.
Yes.
I know I'll be thinking about the Screwtape Letters in a whole new light now.
Me too.
It's more than just a clever story.
It is.
It's a powerful reminder of the spiritual realities that are at play in our lives every
One
day.
at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in a spiritual battle,
We are.
whether we realize it or not.
And it's a call to action, right?
It is.
To be vigilant, to stay close to God, and to never underestimate the power of his love and grace.
Well said.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Screwtape Letters.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, may God bless you and keep you.